So once again, we will try first to use ChatGPT to refute this code. Let's check to see if it is able to find an input on which this code fails, and let us see if once again it is able to identify the portion of this code that is a little bit suspicious. So I will copy this code and go to ChatGPT and ask it once again to find an input on which this fails. I will paste in my code and let's see what ChatGPT has to say. So ChatGPT has produced its answer. It says it's aiming to check if the function is pretty, but it identifies a problem. It says the function only checks if n is divisible by digit sum and if n is greater than or equal to 0 at the end. And that is indeed true. Right at the end, this is the condition that is returned. It is the and or conjunction of two conditions, and if this condition is true, this function is going to return true, and of course if this condition is false, this function will return false. There is another return statement up here, but for now ChatGPT is focusing on the last condition, and this happens when the last return statement is executed, of course, in the case when digit sum is not equal to 0. So this is a special case, and ChatGPT is focusing first on the general case. So let us continue with its explanation. It's saying in the end it's checking if digit sum, then n is divisible by digit sum, and if n is greater than or equal to 0. However, it doesn't correctly handle negative numbers. So it's looking at this general condition and saying this looks suspicious. So it says since the sign of n is an essential part of the problem, the function does not account for this fully. It's saying this logic that it has identified doesn't seem to be right. It doesn't seem to be accounting for a key part of the problem that's asking us to pay attention to the sign of n, because the sign of n is going to determine how we will treat the leading digit. How does this code treat the leading digit? Well, in fact, it looks at all the digits in stir abs of n, meaning it has taken the integer n, taken its absolute value, which eliminates the sign, it makes it a non-negative number, and then converted that into a string. So we've lost information about whether the given n was positive or negative when we take its absolute value. And now we are iterating through all the digits of this resulting string. Do you see pattern 2 here? We are accumulating an answer in digit sum. We're taking that digit, converting it back into an int. Remember, of course, if we're iterating through the elements of a string, those elements are individual letters. So those have to be converted back into integers, and then we can add them into digit sum. This is our accumulator variable. Now, this is what ChatGPT is saying, is this does not account for the sign of that leading digit. And it says it assumes that n is non-negative in the end, and that is the flaw. Well, this is fine as an explanation, but what is the failing input? So ChatGPT suggests an input. It says, how about minus 36? So according to the problem, we have to treat minus 3 and 6 as the digits. Minus 3 and 6, when you add them together, gets you 3. And of course, minus 36 is a multiple of 3. So the answer should be true. So let's try this input that ChatGPT is suggesting. Minus 36. We are expecting the answer to be true. And the only way this can be a counterexample is if this function for some reason returns false. So let's run code check. ChatGPT has suggested this counterexample and it gives us the success message. But the problem that ChatGPT has identified is that because this code has this additional constraint, this function will return false. So ChatGPT has once again identified a counterexample that seems to work. I would encourage you to try this yourself and once again pay attention to the reasoning that ChatGPT provides. You might find that when you try this out, you actually do see some mistakes in the reasoning, even if ChatGPT is able to suggest inputs.